The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para-X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you,
what are you afraid of? Philadelphia's horror home with hosts T. Fox Dunham and Phil Thomas.
So on this episode 83, it's called The Lady Psychic, I got to sit down with Angela Thomas, one of the great psychics of our time.
Yeah.
And we're just going to do the full interview for this show.
Yes, we are. Mm-hmm.
Because she was just so incredible, and she's a gifted psychic, she's an author, and she was just so wonderful to talk to.
I was supposed to join that interview.
Yes.
I had some car problems, so I was unable to to provide transportation for myself to make it. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to be a part of it. But
you know,
you know, you guys did a great job. So
yeah, I just had a few questions, and she mostly, talked about her stuff. And hopefully, we'll get her back on to tell some of her ghost stories and talk about her paranormal experiences.
I would love to speak with her.
Yeah, we'll get her back on. She seems to be away, and then I got very ill.
Right.
And couldn't continue with the show for a few weeks there.
Right.
But no, it's episode 83, The Lady Psychic. Well, I'm T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm Phil Thomas.
And we'll see you on episode 84.
Join us for a journey of the mind on Psychic Spring on What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show.
On What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show this spring, we are interviewing some of the best psychics, mediums, and mentalists from around the world. We've already had the divine pleasure of speaking to Carolyn Clapper, who spoke to us about life after death and said some comforting things. And on this episode of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show, which is episode 82, we are going to be speaking to Angela Thomas. She's a professional psychic and clairvoyant, noted over her 20-year practice for high accuracy and detail. She is a subject participant in an elite consciousness research study focusing on pre-recognition and has gained an enviable reputation for her psychic work in private sessions for individuals, business leaders, and celebrities. A little intimidated. Her work has also included crime victim location and recovery, and she is a vocal advocate for related causes. Her professional website is angelathomas.org. Good evening, Angela. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Fox. Thank you.
So glad to have you. How are you this evening?
Doing wonderful. Enjoying a little bit of sunshine today, so everything is perfect.
You're part of our Psychic Spring, which we're bringing on some great psychics and mediums over the next couple of months. You're one of the more noted ones, and what's so wonderful about you is you're not only a psychic, but you're also an author.
Yes, I've done a lot of work, I've got a lot of roles that I do play, but yes, I've written quite a bit. I have an MFA in writing, and I actually teach. I'm an adjunct professor at a private university, and I teach writing. So, but yes, I've authored prose, poetry, short stories, etc., etc.
Well, that's wonderful. As they say, you're hitting us right in our wheelhouse, since we do paranormal, psychic, ghosts, but we also bring on a lot of indie authors, musicians, and artists. And of course, I am a member of the Horror Writers Association. We have a lot of members of the HWA who are fans of the show. We've also had them on the show, so it's great to have you here, and we can't wait to talk about both your writing and your psychic ability. Are psychics born psychic?
Everyone is psychic, and so therefore, because it is a natural ability, we all are born psychic. However, I believe, Fox, when people ask that, they're really asking if people are born with the ability to use their psychic gifts. And the answer is they're born with the ability, but they don't know how to use those abilities. So I have talked to many psychics, mediums, clairvoyants throughout the world, and what they've shared with me was initially they received psychic information, spontaneously. They didn't know how to control it or direct it or anything. So the information would come, and then they didn't know what to do with it, or they questioned, am I going crazy? But it is, and most psychics and mediums will tell you, as they get older and they recognize what their abilities are, then they generally seek out either research or mentors or information, and they begin to study how to utilize it, how to direct it, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, people are born with the abilities, but they don't really begin to use them effectively until they get a bit older.
So you have done a lot of media work, had appearances on Dead Famous, which has been Living TV, UK and EA. You've been on Parax Radio before, because we're on Parax Radio on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and of course on all major podcast services. You've been on a variety of television and radio shows. You've been on Beyond Belief with George Norrie, and you have a couple of upcoming books, Three-Dimensional Tarot, The Art of Gathering Information and Developing Your Psychic Abilities, a fast-track guide to enhancing your gifts. And I can't wait to check out those books, and we'll have them for you, for our fans, up on the website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. So, speaking of psychics and being born psychic, when did you learn you were psychic? How did it manifest?
As I began to age, still in my teens, I recognized then that not everyone had the same abilities that I had. When we're younger, Fox, we don't really know the difference. We just assume that everyone is receiving information like us, right? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until my 20s, really, from my teens to my 20s, that I really began to work on it a little bit more. And then as I got older, then I began to offer my abilities. But everything just sort of grew so fast to where I could no longer deny that I was a psychic. And so a lot of that was self-acceptance, by the way. I struggled with the fact that I had psychic abilities, and I did not share that with too many people, not publicly. And I did go publicly much later on as I aged, but where I said I cannot deny this ability, and I just want to be in service to others. It's been a long journey.
You feel that your abilities need to be in service to others. That's an altruistic goal. How do you provide that service to others?
One form, I used to volunteer to track missing children, mainly stranger abduction cases, child endangerment cases, and that is, of course, being in service to others. I offer, of course, private reading sessions. The majority of my clients are around the world, so I don't too often see people in person. But just to be able to give them the information that is needed, to me, is very valuable in being in service to others.
One of the services you provide is to help people develop their psychic skills. Can ordinary people develop their psychic skills?
Absolutely. I teach psychic development. For example, currently I'm teaching precognition, which is the ability to see things in the future and how to predict the future. I am teaching retrocognition, which is the ability to see in the past. So some of the things that psychics do, or people that are learning how to utilize their retrocognitive skills, is to utilize, let's say, something like psychometry. And psychometry is the ability to touch or hold an object and get information from that object. And that information predominantly will be past energies and past information about the owner, the previous owner of that object. So it comes very valuable, especially, let's say, if you, Fox, were taking a psychic development class with me and I'm teaching you retrocognition and how to see in the past. You may even take that ability, of course it takes practice through the techniques and methods and approaches that I would teach you, but you may utilize that ability to, let's say, help law enforcement with a criminal case or a missing persons case. So there's a lot of applications and reasons why we want to look in the past. If you were working client to client, let's say you develop your skills and you're offering your own services, Fox, then maybe you see something in the past for, let's say, Jane Doe, and it's coming around to bite her in the bottom. And that's the only reason that you may go back in the past to say, here's a situation I see that is resurfacing. But I also teach third eye training, so how to stimulate and open up that third eye. I teach telepathy, which is mind-to-mind communications, and I also teach remote viewing. So really, there's a lot of different topics that I teach. And yes, individuals, as long as they utilize the techniques and they practice, because it is a lot of work, by the way, to develop. But if they practice, then yes, they can be experts, or at least to the point where they can utilize their psychic abilities to help others.
You have a website where people can find your services at. Would you like to tell us that website? AngelaThomas.org. Is there any precursor? Let's say we have a lot of fans out there and listeners right now who are wondering, let's see if they're intuitive or have some other abilities. Can you tell our fans if there's, any precursors that may indicate someone's intuitive?
Absolutely. One of the precursors that I hear most often is people say the phone rang and I knew exactly who was going to be calling or why they were calling. People may have, let's say, precognitive dreaming, where they dream of an incident and then sure enough, whatever they dreamt about comes into full fruition. Sometimes when you're talking to someone, let's say in person, there may be even a little bit of what I call thought transference. So you know what that individual is thinking, and you know down to the words they are thinking. So let me give you an example. And this was many years ago. I was around a gentleman that I had dated for 5 years, and I had the opportunity to meet his ex-wife. And so she got out of her vehicle and was just very beboppy, in her movements. And I thought to myself, she's a little hoity-toity. And that's an old saying. And lo and behold, he turns around and says, you know what? She's acting all hoity-toity. So really, thought transference occurs, precognitive dreams occur, knowing who's on the phone, knowing who it's going to be if there's a knock at the door, or just the knowing. So if you've ever been asked, well, how do you know that, Fox? And you answer, I just know. And you're confident. That is part of your intuitive psychic abilities. You are indeed receiving information and impressions, and it is rock solid in your heart and mind that it is so. It
sounds like a lot of what you do is building, establishing, and exposing connections.
Absolutely.
Now that makes me feel warm inside, thinking that we're all connected, that the universe is connected, and on a quantum level, it's all relevant too.
Well, I do believe that we're all connected. We are a part of that body of consciousness. So what we do here definitely impacts others. For example, I have this saying that I've used for years, that one word or action affects the masses. And so our own energy, our own moods, our words, which to me are things that carry energy, they do indeed influence and impact other people's lives. Will we, for example, our discussion today impact somebody in China? Not directly, but indirectly, absolutely. So we're all part of a body of consciousness that is ongoing and infinite.
Well, if we have any listeners in China right now, and you're affected by this conversation, drop us a line. Check out the website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. I don't know how many listeners we have in China, but I can tell you a few days ago, we had a lot of listeners in France all of a sudden. I have no idea why.
Ooh,
but all of a sudden, there was just this spike of 500 or 600 listeners in France. So, parlez-vous français? Merci. So you're a psychic development instructor. What do you teach?
Well, I teach a number of subjects. I teach how to use color psychically. So sometimes, psychics, when they're getting information, maybe the information stops. So whether they're seeing visions or hearing, let's say, clairaudiently, or the psychic impressions are coming and then boom, absolutely nothing comes. Then I teach others how to focus on the color or colors that they are getting. So colors, believe it or not, Fox, carries energy. And so if you think of broadband technology, where digital information is being passed along through bands of color, that's how color and psychic information is exchanged. So I teach color and how the body's aura field and impacts themselves and others, chakras, of course, which are energy centers. And then naturally, anything about energy. I teach remote viewing. Remote viewing is an old method that was used by the military, Dr. Russell Targ and Dr. Harold Putoff, engaged with psychic Ingo Swann, which was the psychic that really built up the remote viewing, I guess you could call matrix or method. And they went to the United States Central Intelligence Agency and taught and trained psychic spies during the Cold War. And so that was ongoing. That program was for about 25 years. So I teach remote viewing to others and how to access information and see anything anywhere in the world from the arm of their chair.
If I recall, that program was called the Stargate program.
Yes, Stargate.
Psychic healer, best to stay. Psychic healer, you got the best of me. Psychic healer, it's best to stay. Psychic healer, you got the best of me. Don't sell that sweet marijuana. You know that I'm gonna bother. I want to be where you want me. I'll go to the place that you want me to go. Get around too much for it, honey. Get around, get around, get around. Run around too much for you, honey. Run around, hey! Right. money. Get around, get around, get around. Run around too much for your honey. Run around, hey! Take a kilo, don't you, sonny? You gotta work for your money. You got to take a kilo, take a kilo. You gotta work it. You gotta work it. You gotta work for your money, sonny. You got to take a kilo money. You got to take a kilo, take a kilo.
Psychic Healer by Sigmund Freud. Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror Paranormal Show Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com.
What Are You Afraid Of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction. We are ready to scare you.
Para X. Are you in the Bucks County area, second weekend of June, and in need of a bit of spooky? What Are You Afraid Of? Horror Paranormal Show will be at the first Paranormal Expo at Selma in Norristown, PA. Special guests, P.D. Kazak, horror author and winner of the Bram Stoker Award. Selma Mansion is one of Bucks County's most haunted sites, where guests see candles burning in the windows, spirits moving in the night, and hear the voices of the dead. Come visit horror authors T. Fox and Phil Thomas and P.D. Kazak on June 9th and 10th at 1304 West Harry Street, Norristown, PA. Stay for the cadre of speakers and workshops with famous ghost hunters and paranormal authors. Check out their website at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com for ticket information. Children under 12 are free. Paranormal investigation, $40, sold separately. Psychics, ghost hunters, storytellers, and maybe if you will pass through to the other side. Oh, and Philip Fox and PD. Oh my.
Explore the darkness.
Find out what goes bump in the night. Did you hear that?
Did you see that? What's that bright light in the sky? Oh, we so need to investigate.
Calling all witches and sensitives.
Explore the paranormal.
With host
Shauna
and Vicky
from Geeks Paranormal.
Wednesdays
at 9 Eastern,
8 Central.
Let's explore. This week's guests are
Rachel Marie Booth
and Christopher St. Booth.
April 25th, 2018.
On ParaXRadio.com.
Groundhog Night. Written by Carrie Thomas, author of The Haunting of a Family. From her website, crankyhag.com, and read by David Walton. I was at work one day, and one of the electrical workers came in to talk. I can't remember his real name, but everyone called him Jaws on account of his very thick chin, like Jay Leno's. While sitting at my desk, Jaws shared with me something that had just happened to him the previous weekend. I had gone home to visit the wife and kids, and on the way there I had the strangest thing happen to me. I had decided to take a different route because of the traffic. I knew if I went through our town, I would probably run into heavy traffic as it was a Friday night. Instead, I went around the long way and took all the back roads and state routes that lead to our farm, so I wouldn't have to deal with the frustration of other drivers. As I'm going down this empty patch of road around 9 o'clock at night, I noticed an old man walking on the side. He had a cane and was a little hunched over from age. He had one of the humps on his back, you know, from being old. Anyway, I pulled up alongside of him, rolled down the window and asked if he needed a ride anywhere. "You know you shouldn't pick up hitchhikers," I stated casually. "Remember Pee Wee Gaskins? He used to pick up hitchers and then kill them." "Yeah, I know," Jaws conceded. "But it was a dark highway and there wasn't another house for miles. I didn't want him out there by himself. He was old." He didn't stop walking, but he did look up at me and wave his cane like he was acknowledging me or something. I remember he had a toothless grin too. "He didn't speak?" I asked. "No, he didn't say anything. He just kept walking. It was almost like he didn't really understand me, even though I asked him twice before giving up trying to help. As I drove off, I kind of laughed to myself that maybe he was a ghost, and that was why he didn't seem to understand me. Anyway, about 10 or 15 minutes later, I see him again. This time, he's ahead of me. No cars had passed me, so I know he didn't get a ride and then get dropped off. But here he was, ahead of me. I slowed down as I passed to get a good look and make sure it was the same guy, and it was. He looked up, raised his cane, hello, and grinned at me with that same toothless smile. I sat up and leaned on the desk as I laughed. "Get out of here, Jaws, you're pulling my leg." Jaws shook his head. No, I'm serious." I drove on past. As I was going, I paid particular attention to my surroundings. There was a light pole about 100 feet to my left that apparently was going to have some utility work done on it because it had a big neon orange mark on it. I was kind of like marking my area, like someone who is lost in the woods might do by marking a tree. Only the light pole was already marked. The rest of the highway all looked the same, so that pole was important for me to keep up with in case it happened again. Just as I was thinking my turn was coming up, the same thing happened again. I passed the old man. He waved his cane, smiled, and kept going. I looked for the light pole that was supposed to be about 100 feet away, and there was the same light pole I had mentally marked with the same big neon orange mark from some utility worker. I started to panic and think that maybe I was just too tired, having worked all day and then drove all afternoon to get home. I shook my head in disbelief. I have had some weird experiences too, but nothing like that. The road kept on a straight path. The intersection I was to turn at never came up, so when it happened a fourth time, I started to really freak out, Jaws went on. This time, I did a 3-point turn in the middle of the highway and headed back in the other direction. The old man, who should have literally been walking by me again, had vanished. He had totally disappeared. I started driving in the opposite direction to see if I could get out of this crazy Groundhog Night. Apparently, you succeeded, I concluded, as he was sitting across from me telling the story. Yeah, I did, Jaws agreed as he rubbed his forehead. The other strange thing was when I finally got home, it was almost 9:30, but it should have been much later than that. I had driven past that old man and had spent at least an hour driving that same highway at least 4 times. However, no time had elapsed. It was as if I was in a different dimension until I finally turned around and went back in the other direction. Through the years, I occasionally think of that story Jaws told me. From time to time, I wondered if he really were just telling me a fantastic story, or did that really happen to him? That was 20 years ago, and I have yet, until now, to share that story with anyone. The reason I share it now is because I'm on a Facebook page that features true life ghost stories and events. One of the members in the group shared a story almost identical to this one, with just a little variation to the tale. At first I thought it was Jaws retelling his story, and I had accidentally stumbled upon him until I realised it was a female member and not a man sharing the experience. Unlike Jaws, who was alone when this happened, this young lady was with friends of hers. Others have commented on her post and mentioned they too shared similar experiences, also with slight variations. Having read all of their comments, I'm going to go out on a limb in saying my friend Jaws really did experience a Groundhog Night. If you enjoyed this ghost story, please check out the author's book on Amazon.com, The Haunting of a Family by Kerry Thomas, and her website, www.thecrankyhag.com, for more of her stories. Hi, I'm David Walton, and I drop whatever I'm doing to read whatever Fox and Phil demand of me. My digital, as opposed to ectoplasmic alter ego, is called Brendan Shawland, who regularly plays guitar and sings in a virtual world. Brendan has a website, David doesn't. Bandcamp sales figures would suggest that Brendan's music is decidedly niche. If you want to be in the vanguard of support as Brendan heads towards global domination, just put Brendan Shawland in your favourite search engine, and you'll find his website very close to the top. You'll see what the human looks like, and you can check out the Listen to a Song page to access Brendan's unwillingly private world of creative output.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head, the sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
In the future, roving bands of comic book podcasts will savage the wasteland, once known as the Internet. One podcast, the Grawlix Podcast, may not be the biggest, may not be the funniest, may not be the most well-spoken. Wait, what was my point again? Oh yes, the Grawlix Podcast. Listen to it at grawlixpodcast.com. That's GRAWLIX podcast.com.
I am a cult specialist, paranormal researcher, and independent consultant, Katie Montana Jordan, and this is What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Para X Radio. Now, let's get your creepy on.
Besides being psychic, you're also an author. Where have you been published, and how would you like to see your career grow?
Ooh, interesting. Well, as a writer, naturally, I would love to be able to produce and publish a lot of the works that goes on in my head every day. But I have been a contributing writer, for example, and published through Brad Steiger's books. Brad Steiger is considered the #1 paranormal expert in the country. He's written well over 170 books, so I've contributed 6 short stories to 6 of his books. I have been, like my poetry and prose, have been in several literary journals. I have created different books, some that I haven't published yet, that are filled with short stories, poetry, prose. I'm in the process of, which is not published yet, 3-Dimensional Tarot, The Art of Gathering Information, and that book is really dedicated to existing tarot readers. Some people call it tarot, right? But existing tarot readers that can take the tarot and get more information out of it. So I use tarot, and I call it my 3-dimensional method, because I'm able to get a vast amount of information in one spread from one card. And so I like to, since I am clairvoyant and I'm highly clairaudient, I like to use the example of if I'm hearing Washington and not getting any other information, like is it a person, is it a street, is it the Washington state, is it Washington, D.C., then I will look to the tarot to confirm which one of that it is. So I also have Developing Your Psychic Abilities, a fast-track guide to enhancing your gifts. And part of my psychic development classes, courses, and workshops are literally based on that book itself. So I bring in a lot of different how to use this technique, but all techniques, methods, and approaches that I have created are very simple. Because let's be honest, Fox, there's a lot of techniques out there, and we have books as references, we have videos like on YouTube that will show us how to use certain techniques, certain methods, certain approaches, but some of those are so lengthy. And so I highly doubt that most people looking at lengthy techniques or methods are going to do them daily, right? So I use short, simple techniques so that someone can take 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes out of his or her day and do them to practice and to build strength in those areas.
So, it sounds like you have a daily routine yourself.
I do, yes.
What is precognition, retrocognition, telepathy, and third eye?
Precognition is the ability to see in the future. And so for some people that might be listening going, oh, I don't believe in all of that future stuff. How can you really see in the future? And the thing is, we have a lot of scientists that have studied time. They have discovered is that time either overlaps or it spins. And so we're able to access past, present, and future. And so I teach precognition, how to tap in to future time, into future events. So precognition, the ability to look into the future. Retrocognition is really looking into the past. So let me show you how to look into the past. Again, retrocognition may be used for maybe crime cases or missing persons, or to help someone or to help understand why someone is the way that they are. So let's say, Fox, that your behavior has changed over, let's say, the last 3 months. And a psychic, you see a psychic, and that psychic may be able to reach back into time in your most recent past and see what could have triggered such a behavior from you. So it's got great applications to retrocognition. Telepathy, reading mind to mind, so sending and receiving information. So you and I could literally send and receive information from one another. Now, depending on how your skills are and at what level, you might be a scribbler as far as your ability to send or receive. I might be a Picasso to send or receive. But telepathy is mind-to-mind communications. And so there's just so many different things. Third eye, our third eye is our pineal gland. And our pineal gland, many centuries ago was actually larger than it is today. And why it was larger then than it is today is because our ancestors needed to utilize their third eye or their sixth sense in order to survive. For example, some tribes throughout the world relied on, let's say, a seer or a shaman or, somebody in the community to say, okay, will our cattle survive? Will our crops be damaged? What kind of weather are we going to have to where we might have a drought or we might have flooding? And so utilizing back then their pineal gland and their third eye and their sixth sense, they were able to survive. However, because of our modern technology and our modern access to information, we don't utilize that pineal gland for our own survival. We rely on third sources. We rely on the news and the weathermen and things of this nature, experts to tell us what we need to know before we make our own decisions. So our survival is not based on our sixth sense any longer like that. Using the third eye has great applications because we can then see the past, see the future, see right now. So lots of different applications for our psychic abilities.
I had a thought pop up, and I'm sure you've met your fair share of skeptics.
Absolutely.
And I'm not one of them, and I don't wish to be offensive at all when I say these things, but you say to skeptics who hear that and go, well, why don't you see lottery numbers? Or can you read my mind right now?
Right. Well, one thing I hear the lotto numbers. If I don't hear it 3 times a week, then I don't hear it at all. I constantly hear, oh yeah, well, what's the lotto numbers? And if I could access that information, certainly I would utilize it for myself and share that ability with my family and friends so they too can become multimillionaires overnight. But, sometimes psychic information is not consistent with the information. So you may or may not be able to get a series of numbers, random selected numbers at that. You may not be able to get 5 or 6 numbers from that. But, some psychics are able to pull 3 numbers, 4 numbers, et cetera, in a series, or at least 4 out of 6 numbers. I won't say common. It is above average to be able to pull numbers like that, but it's just not designed, or at least it may be designed for our natural abilities to tap into such things, but our brains or our minds or our own logic may be preventing us from accessing that information. I just feel like some people don't believe that they have those abilities, so therefore they're not going to try, or they would have to have something occur to where there was no question whatsoever that did not happen beyond, let's say, coincidences, which there really is no such thing, right? But a lot of times we say, oh, that was just a coincidence. But for skeptic, I think it's very healthy to be a skeptic. I myself am a skeptical individual, and let me explain why. Because there's a lot of people out there that say, you know what, I'm a psychic, and I'm a shaman, and I'm a clairvoyant, and I'm a this, that, and the other, and they might have a laundry list of self-titles. So when somebody has, let's say 8, 10 titles, and they're only, let's say, 20 years of age, I already know from my own experience that that's not true. But I am skeptical of his or her ability. So they may have some strong psychic abilities that they have yet to tap into, but I'm skeptical of many people that claim to have strong intuitive abilities. So I kind of sit back and listen, or I will research or look for testimonials, or if they want to engage me or collaborate with me, then I'm willing to do that to see if his or her abilities are truly there. But I think it's skeptical with anyone, just like with paranormal events that happen. Was that really a spirit I just saw or not? And I believe that we have to be skeptical or question it, or at least reserve some room for some sort of logic. So I'm sure through paranormal events and being a radio host yourself, Fox, that people you've spoken to may have gone into, let's say, homes and did a paranormal investigation. And part of those investigations, let's say if you went to investigate, some activity in a home that the homeowner is claiming that there is, one of your first things before you ever start your investigation is going to ask that homeowner about exactly what is happening and when did it happen and how often does it occur, so that you rule out that the home owner is mentally sound or emotionally sound. Because, again, logically, realistically, it is possible that that homeowner may not be quite sound or maybe suffer from audio or visual hallucinations. So again, it's healthy to be skeptical, but I can say to you that there are literally thousands of scientists out there now that have the evidence of paranormal activities, of psychic abilities, etc., where the public may not be so much aware of, or where they, draw the line, because we have scientists that say absolutely not, you can't prove that or unprove it or disprove it. And then you have scientists that say, yes, I have. I've done the math, I've done the testing, etc., and here's my results. What it is I see a huge prejudice in the scientific community. You have those scientists that absolutely have been brought up and educated to believe that there is only X, Y, and Z, period. And so for those scientists, they call the other scientists that actually have discoveries, well, they're just quacks, or they don't know what they're doing. But I can say to you that some of the world's most leading scientists and leading minds, let's say, for example, Dr. Vernon Neppe, considered one of the greatest minds of the 21st century, still living, still doing research, still publishing results. He and many of his associates, Dean Radin, for example, there's another individual, Dr. Edward Close. I could go on and on and on. Dr. Stephen Schwartz, Dr. Gary Schwartz. These are scientists that have facts. And so for those skeptics, I would highly suggest, why don't you take some time to actually look at the published findings of these scientists before you make a true judgment about what does and does not exist.
Going back to what you were saying about lotto numbers and that sort of thing, I've heard it described that certain events resonate differently in the web of human psyche. That, like, say, a murder upsets things so badly that it's much easier to read in time and space, as opposed to the emotions associated with lotto numbers popping up, which has very little emotional response to, and you referring to empaths and people that can read emotions in people through time. Would you say that there's any relevance to that?
There's a lot of relevance to that, because every event is different. And like you say, Fox, let's say a criminal case, a murder, that is so negatively impactful energetically to where the body was found, what has happened. That energy has gone out. That energy may be residual. It may be there. Emotions, the emotion of the victim, the emotions of the criminal, the emotions of the individuals, family and friends that knew that victim. So that is more impactful, more energetic than, let's say, randomly selected lotto numbers. There is no emotion behind the event of pulling a series of 6 numbers. So yes, it's all relative, but every event is different, and therefore it's perceived differently, it is accessed differently, etc., etc.
I'm reminded of the writings of science fiction authors like Philip K. Dick. It just seems very intuitive when you talk about it, and very logical when you think about it. And we are speaking to Angela Thomas on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show, episode 82. And you can find out more information about Angela at our website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. We are available on Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio, EMC Podcast Network, and all major podcast services.
Rat, where are you going?
I'm going back to the Paranormal View, back where I belong.
Please, take me with you.
No, I'm through with everything here. I want to see if there's something left in life I haven't explored. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Rat, don't run to them. They talk about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs, and all kind of supernatural scary stuff.
You'll never understand, will you, Scarlet?
No!
Well, that's your misfortune.
Rat, if you go, where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear... Line!
You gotta be kidding.
That's the Paranormal View with your host, Henry Foister, Jeffrey Gould, and Barbara Duncan. Every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the Para X Radio Network.
Caliburn Press, LLC is a Madison, Wisconsin-based publishing company owned and operated by Alan Ledden. Caliburn works with talented writers, artists, editors, and marketers throughout the United States, and you can find their books through their many imprints that include Damnation Books, Eternal Press, Malaferia Press, Ciento Sordida Publishing, and Spiro Publishing. Please visit their website at sites.google.com/site/Caliburn Press LLC /home, or Google Caliburn Press to check out their growing list of titles on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and any other place fine books are sold.
Hi, this is Tim from Comic Zen. We're located at 301A West Main Street in Lansdale, right near the intersection with Susquehanna Avenue. We have new comics, old comics, graphic novels, including comics made just for kids. Action figures, statues, comic supplies, board games, card games, and much more. We have a special order service for both comics and games, and we have a comic subscription service so you don't miss your monthly issues. So come to Comic Zen. Just don't upset the samurai ghost who haunts the store.
And guess what, kiddies? Foxy and Philly will be recording live from Comic Zen in Lansdale every first Friday of the month. So come down and see us at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, not then, because we will be recording live for the Philly Foxy Haunted Spooky Hour on Para X Radio. And bring your ghost stories a little before or a little after, and we'll be glad to collect them at Comic Zen. First Fridays, at Comic Zen.
Comic Zen.
In Lansdale, PA. Hey kiddies, this is T. Fox Dunham closing episode 83, The Lady Psychic. We'll be back with episode 84 with part 2 of that wonderful interview with Angela Thomas, and hopefully we will get her back on the show to tell us some ghost stories. And we got some wonderful psychics coming in. By the way, that was Reservoir Psychic by Nuzu. All our music is played under a license, the Attribution Non-Commercial Non-Derivatives, aka Music Sharing 3.0 International License, and naturally we don't make any money off the show, so, we're allowed to use it. It's what's called pod-safe music. We also use a lot from Kevin MacLeod, and any other music we use is given permission from, the band to play, like Katrina Weidman's band, Away from 30, which will be back on the show soon. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with us on episode 83, and I just want to give a special thank you over to ParaX Radio, especially that wonderful, and she works so hard behind the scenes, that kooky, amazing Rebecca Brumble and her husband Eric, and of course Barbara Duncan over there at the Paranormal View. They were very supportive when I've been fighting this sort of weird sepsis thing that I've been going through, and hopefully it'll stay under wraps so we can continue to bring you some amazing paranormal stuff throughout the summer as we continue bringing psychics on for our Psychic Summer. Anyway, all the kiddies in the chat room, all the kiddies listen to us on EMC, all the kiddies listen to us on ParaX Radio, and everyone downloading us, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show. And check out the website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. I just updated it. It's looking good, and we got a great interview up there from Carolyn Clapper, that wonderful psychic we had on episode 80, Life After Life. We actually did the video interview, and you can see us hanging out and chatting, and she's just a lovely person. Go check it out at the website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com or our YouTube channel. Anyway, find us at Twitter at pfwhatafraidof, and send us some ghost stories when you get a chance. Hey, this is T. Fox Dunham. Get your spooky on.
She's a little hoity-toity.
T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Book. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the Stargate anthology, Points of Origin, from MGM and Fandemonium Books. Mercy was recently released by Bloodbound Books. Fox is an active member of the Harbor Association. He's been published in hundreds of short stories and articles, and his motto is Wrecking Civilization, one story at a time.
Phil Thomas resides in the suburbs of Philadelphia and is an author and filmmaker. His screenplays have been produced into feature films such as False Face and Always from Darkness that are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.